Now, we may be more than a stone's throw from the seat of government in London, but for half a century, our region and our programming has been centre stage in the political arena. And for viewers in the North East, the man in the know is Jerry Foley.
Welcome to Westminster, the mother of all parliaments, home to the Commons. We may have relatively few MPs represented here, but they carry considerable clout. The last decade in particular has been something of a golden period. Good news for a political correspondent like myself. Once the MP for Sedgefield, Tony Blair, became the PM, he soon found time in his cabinet for northern colleagues like Mo Mowlam, Peter Mandelson, Stephen Byres, Alan Milburn, Nick Brown, Hilary Armstrong and more recently David Miliband. While on the Conservative side we saw the Richmond MP William Hague rise to his party's leadership.
Is it not an opportunity to enhance the role of Parliament? He's never missed an opportunity to diminish the role of Parliament in the last 2 years.
And in the 1970s, a young Liberal emerged on the regional political scene. Alan Beath became the MP for Berwick. He's still there and was until recently his party's deputy leader. But back in the early days of Tyne television, another former local MP was running the country.
Is it too good to be true? Or perhaps I should say, is it too good to last?
Harold Macmillan was, with the exception of 2 years, the Conservative MP for Stockton from 1924 to 1945. Macmillan's time as a Teesside MP had a profound impact on his political philosophy, compassionate conservatism, which he pursued as Prime Minister from 1957. He died in 1986. 1986 also saw the passing of another senior, or in his case, very senior political figure. By 1945, he was a Minister for Fuel and oversaw the nationalisation of the coal industry. It was something close to his constituency heart, which by 1950 was renamed Easington. He remained an MP until 1970 before switching to the Lords. He was nearly 102 when he died, having become the longest living UK politician in history. History of a different kind was made by the legendary Tyne Smith, whose controversial time as leader of Newcastle Council in the early 60s eventually caught up with him in the shape of a 6-year prison sentence for conspiracy and corruption. Tyne was a self-styled Mr. Newcastle who saw the city as the Brasilia of the North. He ordered widespread slum clearance and controversial building projects. But he had fallen in with the architect John Poulsen, who considered bribery and corruption as useful tools for securing public contracts. The 60s also featured a landmark Tyne programme, Face the Press. Originally broadcast live on Friday nights at 10:30 from the City Road studios, the programme eventually went national and scored a PR triumph when it managed to persuade Prince Philip to appear on the programme.
In normal events, that will be a long, long time before Prince Charles becomes king. Is there any reason why he shouldn't have a normal sort of career that any ordinary boy might have?
No. Well, or rather, I don't know, no or yes. The answer is, it seems to me, that a great many heirs have in fact done jobs, but most of them have been within the services.
One politician who consistently caught the attention of the press was Margaret Thatcher. In 1987, she made what became known as a walk in the wilderness at Thornaby, on Teesside. And on a visit to Tyneside, the Iron Lady was in fiery form.
I remember it well. Maggie was visiting an offshore yard at Wallsend. You've got to remember that unemployment was still high in the region. It was a year after the miners' strike, and I had the temerity to ask her why she wasn't visiting and interviewing any unemployed people during her visit to the North East. She gave me this withering look.
Look, I cannot do everything.
And launched into this tirade, vintage Maggie.
Show the success of the North East. Some of the work that is being done is fantastically successful. Don't you think that's the way to persuade more companies to come to this region and get more jobs as I want them for the people who are unemployed? Not always standing there as moaning minis. Now stop it.
It's not every day you're called a moaning mini by the Prime Minister. Thank God I was wearing a hard hat.
Within 14 years of being returned as the MP for Sedgefield, Anthony Charles Linton Blair had transformed the fortunes of the Labour Party and secured the first of 3 commanding victories. Earlier this year, Mr Blair cemented his place in the history books with a hat-trick of victories, although this time round, even in Sedgefield, he couldn't escape the fallout from the Iraq War. Mr Blair's closeness to George Bush was evident when he invited the US President to visit his constituency, making the Texan the second president after Jimmy Carter in the 70s to come north.
How are the lads?
They call the Tyne a drain by the time it empties into the sea, for man has had to brutalise that which is so useful to him.
Now there's a handsome young man. He's been gracing our screens for more than 40 years. And what a career.
What do you miss most about the North East when you're working in Manchester?
You, Mike.
Oh, God. And we didn't rehearse that, you know.
Well, there may be a spot for a nice, young, handsome newsreader in it, you know.
Oh,
do you know anybody?
No, I don't offhand. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You too.
Thanks a lot, man.
Mike Neville, I've made it!
One of your big fans, there's millions of them around, of course, wished you to have this home-knitted Lil from Ushaw-Muir.
Oh, thank you, Lil. I shall wear it with pride.
Actually, she also said it's a tea cosy. But however, if you want to look at pride, that's up to you.
I'd like to say, isn't it wonderful what we do when desperation sets in?
Well, it must be Mike here. I've really got a very
deep voice, you know, you understand.
I know you have both.
Well, of course, where there's Mike, there's a cheeky Scot. And you know, behind all the banter lies a technical brain. Just look at all this lot. So it's not true he relies only on seaweed and a barometer.
Well, whether it is or whether it isn't, spare a thought for us much maligned weather forecasters. 1 minute, it's as dry as old bones. The next, well, there's water everywhere. Now, for almost 50 years, a variety of weather forecasters have been bringing a variety of weather forecasts to Tyne T's television. But did you know that we were one of the first TV companies ever to bring a touch of glamour to the weather maps? In the beginning, there was Marion Foster, Tyne T's first weather girl, plucked from the relative obscurity of the geography department of Newcastle University.
It was completely unexpected. Out of the blue, the phone rang, I was at home, picked it up, and it was my tutor. They said, Tyne Tees has been on to Newcastle University, asking for women who could do weather forecasts, and I hope you don't mind, but I've put your name up amongst some of the others, because as geography students, we read meteorology and climatology.
Now let's take a look at the weather situation for the next 24 hours. Here's Wincy Willis.
Thank you, Tom. Hello. Well, I think it's been a smashing day, even if the sun hasn't made as much of an appearance as we'd hoped. Tonight's going to be
the technology was still pretty basic when another ray of sunshine, Wincy Willis, breezed into the Tyne T's studios.
I thought I'd wear my favourite hat tonight, just to remind you to stop feeding the wild birds now. Do you like it? This is the time when feeding the wild birds does more harm than good. See you tomorrow, soon after 6 with the weekend weather.
Well, I must say today the weather's been very pleasant. Let's hope it continues. Better still, let's find out with Pam Royal.
Thanks, Paul. Hello. Well, thank goodness the wind's calmed down at last.
And then there was Pam Royal, of course. Yes, our Pam started her broadcasting career in her element, so to speak, in front of the boards.
Temperatures will reach 10 centigrade, 50 Fahrenheit.
After the Weather Girls, it was time for a change. In 1991, Tyne T's launched an unbroken 14 years of regional weather forecasting by recruiting a portly, follically challenged Scotsman. That's me, in case you were wondering. Who knows which way the wind's blowing for Tyne T's weather? But then, I've been wondering that for 14 years. Just about. Well, it turned out a nice day in Ashwinning. It turned out a nice day just about wherever you are.
The Tyne Tees of today is driven by £6 million worth of the latest digital technology, enabling us to be at the forefront of regional news and television production. This purpose-built building on the riverbank at Gateshead has been a hive of activity since we moved in earlier this year, and alongside the news operation are the regional programmes which define where we live.
Red stuff sandstone, black stuff dolerite. like an old, much-loved and well-washed sock. I think I should just stand here for a moment and look proud, in a northeastern sort of way.
I think people who never see their own lives, never see their own town or village mentioned on television, begin to think that they're sort of substandard, they don't count. So regional telly is terribly important.
The trams were very successful, except that they had a limitation, and the limitation was that they couldn't expand, so that it was necessary to incorporate something which was more mobile, and the omnibus was the answer.
They'd been trundling unchallenged over Wearmouth Bridge for altogether 75 years. Now their number was up, consigned to the scrap heap by the upstart motor buses.
Going down hills is actually much more tricky because we don't have any brakes.
Comforting. Come on, about last grunt. Romance. I smell romance.
In his dreams, as they say.
I want Tyne Tees television. I want to know what's happening in my backyard. And that gives you a sense that your area matters. And I think that is really terribly important.
When I go up there, the scenery, I think it's out of this world. If you were up that top road, well, any time really, you can look right up the valley to the top. The view is absolutely, you can see the lake and everything, it's marvellous.
And what is it about working the dogs that's kept you going all this time?
I love working the dogs. I love to see them working, and I love working that Kim. She's a lovely bitch to work.
And of course, network programmes on ITV1 continue to be made here in the North East. Peter Davison is currently filming his latest series of Distant Shores in Northumberland, and Robson Green's in production with his new drama.
OK, you know the drill, Harv.
Keep low profile.
Kate?
No drawing attention to ourselves.
With any luck, no one will even know we're here.
Oh my God.
Kate, they look like you.
Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a big hand to say welcome. It's Dr. William Shaw.
They love you, Dad.
Yeah.
Tony, you missed your surgery.
Has he called yet?
Yes. And we couldn't understand him.
Maybe I should come in.
I'll send a car. Where are you? Tony?
How did they get it over here? Did they ship it by...
Fly.
Huh?
No, it did.
They flew, of course.
Over.
High, low, everywhere we go. One chitty,
I
chitty,
knew
wee,
you'd
dee,
stop.
pen. Bang, bang, chitty, chitty, bang, bang.
Chitty, chitty, bang, bang. A fine for friend, good friend.
And there we are. I hope you've enjoyed the journey from our first day to the present day. ITV is still going strong in the North East, serving the region. And however you receive your future programmes, we hope you'll still be watching Tyne Tees.